Guys, we are starting with the B part of calorimetry. So this theory part is really interesting. I mean, the application involved is really too good, and it's quite simple compared to the A part theory. But the numerical is the only challenging part in the B part of the chapter. So there is just one more additional formula, one short formula is there. Q is equal to ml. But the problems in these are actually very much application based. So we'll start first. Let's start with the theory. Guys, see, you've learned in the lower standards also that when you heat up a solid, okay, so when you heat up a solid, it will get converted into what? Liquid. Then if you heat up a liquid further, it gets converted into what? A gas. But if you cool a gas, it will convert back to liquid, and a liquid on cooling back gets converted to what? Solid. So now what is the process from solid to liquid called as? It is called as melting. Okay, the process of converting a solid into a liquid is called as what? Melting. Liquid to gas is called as what? Boiling. So this is called as a boiling or even vaporization. Gas to liquid is called as condensation, and liquid to solid is called as freezing. Okay, the temperature at which melting takes place is called as melting point. It is called as boiling point. It is called as condensation point, and this is called as a freezing point. Okay. Now there is one more process which is called as sublimation. So what is sublimation? When a solid is getting converted directly into gas, okay, without converting into liquid, is called as sublimation. And when a gas is converted back into solid, then it is called as what? Solidification. So okay, now but we are not learning more about sublimation and solidification here, but we are going to learn about these four processes. So first they can ask you to define melting. So how do you define melting? Melting is the process in which we are changing in which all the solid is converted into liquid at a constant temperature. Remember, it is very important to mention constant temperature. Same way, how will you define freezing? So the change from the freezing will be the change from liquid to solid at a constant temperature is called as what? Freezing. So same way you have to define the other terms also, boiling and condensation. Now what if they ask you to define boiling point? So what is boiling point? The constant temperature at which all the liquid gets converted into gas is called as what? Boiling point. Same way you can define the other terms now. So those terms are easy, you can just check in the textbook. Now next thing, so this what I wrote was in general about any substance, solid to liquid, liquid to gas. But the same thing if I write for ice. So see what would it become? When you heat up ice, it will convert into what? Water. When you heat up water, it will get converted into what further? Steam. Same way, steam will convert back to water, and water will again convert back to ice. Now the temperature at which ice converts to water is what? 0 degree. Water to steam also will happen at what? 100 degree. But steam will condense to water also at 100 degree, and water will also convert to ice at 0 degree. So remember, the melting point of ice is equal to the freezing point of water. The boiling point of water is equal to condensation point of steam. But this is true only for which substance? For a pure substance, meaning there should not be any kind of impurity. Only then will the MP be equal to the FP. Got it? So remember, we can have ice at 0 degree as well as we can have what? Water also at 0 degree centigrade. So both of them are possible. Now this solid, liquid, gases, they are also called as what? In this freezing, boiling, condensation, there is a change in the state, or it is also called as change of phase. Okay, PHASE. Like we had learned a phase wire. So out here this is also called as what? Change of state or change of the phase. Clear? Just tell me now, when I am converting ice into water, will you be supplying heat or absorbing heat from it? We will be supplying heat. And when you want to convert water into ice, you are going to remove the heat from it. Correct? So when you want to convert ice into water, you can just let it melt itself, or you put it on a gas and it will melt faster. And if you want to convert water back to ice, you'll put it into a refrigerator or your deep freezer. Now, next thing, okay, now, so whatever this one we have done, that is, this is only for ice. I mean, you need to know only the melting point and the boiling point for ice. There are, for other materials you don't need to do, they'll give you in the exam whenever they want you to mention that. Now, next thing is about, we are learning is about the latent heat now. Now, what do you mean by latent heat? So, latent heat means what, you know, whenever you'll supply, whenever like out here, you can see when we are giving the heat, ice has got converted into what? Water. But we did not see any rise in the temperature. So that heat which was supplied, wherein the body does not show any rise in temperature, that is called as what? The latent heat. Okay, so we'll discuss latent heat and all also in some time. We'll discuss it in more detail, but just one another concept we need to know is that how can the pressure affect the boiling point and the melting point. So see, out here I'll make a table form out here. So say here we have got pressure and then there is impurity. So if you increase the pressure or if you increase the impurity, what's the effect on the boiling point and what is the effect on the melting point? We're going to learn about this now. So whenever you increase the pressure, the boiling point will also increase for a liquid. Okay, and if you increase the pressure, impurity, then also the boiling point will increase. If you notice, boiling point is directly proportional. You increase pressure, it increases. You increase impurity, it will increase. What does it mean? We'll discuss about the pressure first. So we know we all make use of a pressure cooker. Why do we use? What does the pressure cooker basically do? It increases the pressure inside the vessel. And if you increase the pressure, then the boiling point will also increase. So normally the water which boils at 100 degree will now boil at what temperature? Say roughly 120 to 125 degree centigrade. So basically with the help of a pressure cooker, you are able to heat up to a higher temperature. If you are able to heat up to a higher temperature, what's the advantage? Now the water is at a higher temperature, so it will give the heat more faster and more heat to the food inside. Hence, you'll be able to cook your food faster. You'll be able to save the fuel. So in Mumbai, we still make use of pressure cooker, correct? Even though the atmospheric pressure is how much? 76 centimeter of mercury. Okay, for the reason I mentioned already. But if you go to higher altitudes, like if you go to Darjeeling or these places, there the boiling point is not 100 degree for water. It becomes lesser because we are at a higher altitude. So say the water out there will boil at 90 degree only. Now the problem is what, if water is not going to a higher temperature, it will not impart the heat further to the food easily. So in those places, it is like a compulsory, it's necessary that you make use of a pressure cooker to cook your food properly over there, because the pressure over there is too low. Right? So they can ask you some application on the basis of this about the pressure cook, this concept. How will the increasing pressure helps you? So this was one application. Second application is if you increase the impurity. So like for example, if you have seawater or if you had a salt, or I don't know if you notice your parents when they cook food, they also add some salt or squeeze some lemon in the cooker. Why? Because if they increase the impurity, then again the boiling point will increase further and they'll make it further easier for you to cook the food. Then next thing is about the melting point. So if you increase the pressure, then the melting point will decrease. If you increase the impurity, melting point will decrease. So it's very easy to remember. Here both of them are inversely proportional, and here both of them were directly proportional. Guys, now so what do you mean first by the melting point which decreases? It means that the ice which was first melting at 0 degree will now melt at what? Minus 2 degree only. Got it? When I say melting point decreases, it means the melting point of ice, instead of melting at 0 degree, it starts melting at what? Minus 2 degree centigrade only. Guys, listen to this properly. This is a little confusing now. So when you're, let's say you're holding a ice cube in your hand, okay, which is at minus 2 degrees centigrade. Okay, so assume you're holding it in your hand. Now it will be in the form of ice only, solid. Now what do? You start applying the pressure on that ice cube. So you keep on compressing it, and when you compress it too hard, let's say, this is just imaginary I'm talking about, you just keep on compressing it, and at one point its melting point instead of 0 will become what? Minus 2 degree. And at that pressure, what happened? Your ice would have converted into what? Water. But the moment you'll again open your fist, what will happen? All that water would have again converted into what? Ice. Why? Because now the pressure is decreased again, so it converts back to ice. So they can ask you some applications based on this thing, how you make use of increase in pressure, or what are the applications. So like if you've seen, let's say if this is a block of ice, you take any sharp object, knife or something, and then you keep on just keep on rubbing over it. You will find what, you'll see very easily a groove will be formed over there. Okay, or when you go for ice skating, so when you skate, you will see your tracks or those traces are formed behind. Why? Because of your higher pressure, the ice will start melting, correct? And because the ice will be melting, so you'll find the tracks. But when you come back to the same point again after the one lap, what will you find? Those traces must have disappeared now. Why did they disappear? That's because when you moved ahead, you have released the pressure. So again, when the pressure is decreased, again what happened? The water will convert back to ice. Same way, there was another question. This had come in a JNS paper, Jamnabai school paper. They had asked that how do Golawalas make use of this concept of pressure and melting point? So what do Golawalas do? First they get the ice, right? They crush the ice. They get the crystals of ice. Then they try to make that lump with a stick. Okay, so when they make a lump, what they do? They compress it, release it, compress, release, compress, release. Why do they keep on doing this? Or they can also ask, when you want to play with the snow, or when you want to throw snow on your friend, you just don't pick up snow and then throw at your friends. You'll first take a snow and you try to make a snow ball out of it, like keep on compressing. Just like how they make golas. How does this work? That's because when you're applying the forces on those, what will happen, when you're applying the forces on those, like say for example, these are the two ice crystals. When I try to get them closer and apply the force, what will happen to the layer in between them? There will be a layer of water formed. Why water will be formed? Because the melting point is decreased with the increase in pressure. And because the melting point gets decreased, there will be a film of water formed. But the moment you release the pressure, this water will again convert back to what? Ice. And that's why these both will get stuck. You can try this at home, or you must have already noticed, when you try to remove the ice cubes into a vessel, you might have seen some of the ice cubes, they stick to each other for the same reason. Or if you take a few ice cubes, 5-7 ice cubes in a handkerchief, and hold it very tightly in a handkerchief and open them after a couple of minutes, you will find some of the ice cubes must have joined to each other. Okay. So these are such kind of applications are what they can ask you. Now the next application is about the impurities. So if you add impurity to the ice, then also its melting point will decrease. Now, so how do they make use of this now? So have you heard of freezing mixture? There's something called as a freezing mixture. So when they want to make kulfis, you might have seen, people who sell those soft drinks or kulfis at the beaches and all. They usually carry a box. It's made up of thermocol, I think, yeah. So they can ask you like, how do they make use in that? So basically in a freezing mixture what happens, it's a mixture of ice and salt. Look, I'll repeat once again. Freezing mixture, it's a mixture of ice and salt, and when you mix them, the temperature comes down to minus 22 degree centigrade. Correct? The temperature comes down to minus 22 degree centigrade. You can get it as low as minus 22 degree centigrade. Got it? And that's the advantage. So that's why we use freezing mixture. So if you are using water alone, it will not be able to cool your soft drinks or your ice creams effectively, and hence they make use of this freezing mixture. So in your textbook they have mentioned that the freezing mixture used in preparing what? Kulfis. If you've ever had roadside kulfis also, the same thing, they don't have a refrigerator with them, so they, in that cuboid, in that box, they first put ice, they put pieces of ice, and then again add up salt, and then those casts are immersed in that box. Okay, next thing, okay, there was one more concept. One second, just check. Yeah, okay, see, they can also ask you that, for example, it was given that what will be the change in the volume of ice. See, what will be the change in volume of ice? So if you have 1 gram of ice at 0 degree, it will have a volume of 1.091, but when you melt it, it will become what? 1 gram of water at 0 degree with a volume of 1 cm3. Already we will discuss it in the class about this volume, what happens to the volume, how much it increases and all. Guys, next thing, now we are going to start with the latent heat now. So that's like the main part of the chapter. Rest of the part is just like the theory. You'll read it once also, you'll understand definitions and all that. Okay, so let's start with the latent heat part now. So let's see out here in this one, say you have one funnel, okay, or okay, let's say not a funnel, say you have a beaker, in that we have put a thermometer, and around the thermometer there are cubes of ice out here, and then we started heating up this funnel over here. So we started heating this cubes of ice in a beaker. Now in the beginning, let's say the temperature of the ice in the beginning was minus 10 degree centigrade, and we started heating it. So when you start heating up this ice at minus 10 degrees centigrade in the beginning, you will find that there is a rise in the temperature. So whatever heat we are supplying here is used where? In raising the temperature of the ice. What do you mean raising the temperature from minus 10? Where will it move? Minus 10, minus 9, minus 8, minus 7 and so on. So you will find that there will be a continuous rise in the temperature of the ice from minus 10 degree up to 0 degree. Now if you remember that the kinetic energy of all these molecules is directly proportional to what? The temperature. So whenever there is a change in the temperature, there will be a change in the kinetic energy. So here the temperature is increasing, so the kinetic energy of the molecules is also increasing, correct? So look over here, the molecules of this ice are moving more vigorously. Right? That's why it shows a higher rise in the temperature. But they are not leaving their positions. They are in their own position, but they are just moving little more vigorously as compared to earlier. I'll repeat once again. So wherever each molecule was, it is still staying over there only. It is just vibrating more vigorously. Now when you still continue to heat the ice cubes further, what do you find? There is no change in the temperature. you will find that there is no change in the temperature, but the state of the liquid, state of the ice has changed to water. So there is a change in the state, but there is no change in the temperature. Clear? So ice converts into what? Water. Water at 0 degree centigrade. Clear? Ice 0 will become what? Water at 0 degree. Now so over here there is no change in the temperature. So where did the heat go now? So usually we've learned so far, whenever you heat a substance there will be a rise in the temperature, but here we notice what? Even when you are heating there is no rise in the temperature. So then where did the energy go? So whatever heat energy you supplied, it was used in changing the state of the substance. What does it mean? We have converted ice into what? Water. So we have changed the state of the substance. Is it clear? So this energy which we supplied was utilized in moving these molecules apart, not in increasing their kinetic energy. So they are moving with the same vibration as they were here. But what has happened to those molecules? They have moved further apart from each other. Got it? So that's the difference. So your ice at 0 degree have turned into what? Water at 0 degree. So there is a change in the potential energy. So remember, whenever your delta T is equal to 0, it means there is going to be a change in the potential energy. I hope you'll remember, U is a symbol for potential energy. Clear? So the intermolecular forces will become weaker and the intermolecular spaces will increase and they'll move further apart. Now let's continue heating up further and you will find what? Water at 0 degree will turn into what? Water at 100 degree. So there is a rise in the temperature. Correct? There is a rise in the temperature, but there is no change in the state again. It means what energy is changing here? Again the kinetic energy is increasing. Why? Because there is an increase in the temperature. Again let's continue to heat up further and again you will not find any rise in the temperature. So it means water at 100 will become what? Steam at 100 degree. So water converts to steam. Okay. Now so again out here there is no change in the temperature, but there is a change in the state. So what form of energy will change over here? Potential energy. I'll just summarize over here. See out here which form of energy is changing over here? Kinetic energy. In fact kinetic energy will increase. No change in the potential energy. Here potential energy will increase. Here kinetic energy will again increase, and here again the potential energy will increase. But there is no change in potential, no change in kinetic, no change in potential, no change in the kinetic energy. I hope this concept of potential and kinetic is clear. I'll repeat once again. Whenever there is a change in the temperature, there has to be a change in the kinetic energy. Whenever there is no change in temperature, but you have supplied energy, then there will be a change in the potential energy. Okay. Now, what do you mean by latent heat? So see first, what do you mean by latent heat? We'll discuss about the different types of heat now. Okay, so let's see first now, what do you mean by latent heat? So latent heat means what? It is the heat required, latent heat. Okay, these are not the exact definitions. I'm just making you understand what are they. So you have to learn the textbook definition from the textbooks only. So what do you mean by latent heat? It is the amount of heat required to change the state of a substance. To change the state of a substance at constant temperature. So that amount of heat is called as what? Latent heat. So the amount of heat required to change the state or the phase of a substance at constant temperature. That's called as a latent heat. Number 2, what do you mean by specific latent heat? So just like we had done specific heat capacity, now we've got what? SLH, specific latent heat. So what do you mean by specific latent heat? It is the amount of heat energy required to change the state of a unit mass of a substance at constant temperature. So look at the difference. This is specific. Specific means what? Unit mass. As we remember, unit mass is what? Per unit, like per 1 kg of or 1 gram. Okay. So this is called a specific latent heat. Now there is something which is called a specific latent heat of melting or specific latent heat of freezing. So now what do you mean by specific latent heat of melting or freezing? We'll discuss first the specific latent heat of melting. So it's called a specific latent heat of melting, or it is also called as fusion. Specific latent heat of fusion or of melting, or they also call it as that sometimes ice also. So what do you mean specific latent heat of fusion or melting or ice? So that is the amount of heat energy required to convert ice at 0 degree into what? Water at 0 degree. Correct? When you want to convert ice 0 to water 0, basically solid to liquid. Okay, actually I made a mistake over here. When they say specific latent heat of only fusion or melting, it will be only from solid to liquid, but we are learning more about only ice and water here, like steam. That's why I just wrote ice 0 to water 0. Then same way, there is also something which is called as specific latent heat of vaporization. Specific latent heat of vaporization or specific latent heat of boiling. Again same way out here. In this boiling, what will happen? We are converting a liquid into what? Gas. Correct? Or we can say what? We are converting water at 100 degree into what? Steam at 100 degree. Then another thing, same way there is also specific latent heat of freezing. Specific latent heat of freezing. So what would this mean now? Freezing means what? We are converting liquid into what? Solid. Again at what? Constant temperature. So that is called as what? Specific latent heat of freezing. But again, if it is ice, then it will be what? From water 0 to water 0 to ice at 0 degree. So it could also be water at 0 degree into what? Ice at 0 degree. And same way, there is also specific latent heat of condensation. Okay, there is also specific latent heat of condensation. Again, what do you mean by condensation? We are converting what? We will be converting gas into what? Liquid. Or I can say what? Like steam at 100 degree will be converted back into what? Water at 100 degree centigrade. But now we'll discuss about what are the different specific latent heat. So see, first thing, I'm discussing everything about only water. Okay, ice or water or steam. So what do you mean by specific latent heat of fusion? Okay, this is all about only, we are discussing about what? Only about the ice. So specific latent heat of fusion of ice. Okay, they call it as fusion of ice. You could also call it as or just specific latent heat of ice also they call in the textbook. So out here what we are doing, we are converting, say if you are converting ice at 0 degree into water at 0 degree, what are we going to do? We are going to give heat to it, right? You are going to give the heat to the substance. So what is taking place over here? Melting. Okay, so fusion of ice means what? Basically melting. So ice 0 converts to water 0. And how much heat has to be supplied? You need to supply 336 joule of heat for every 1 gram. It means if you had 1 gram of ice, you will have to give 336 joule of heat to it so that it converts into water. Got it? Even the reverse is possible. The reverse is called as what? Specific latent heat of freezing now. So specific latent heat of freezing of ice is what they call in your textbook. Obviously it's already ice, so it can't freeze, but that's how they call specific latent heat of freezing of ice. Now what is specific latent heat of freezing of ice? So over here it's a reverse process. So if you have water at 0 degree, you will have to remove heat from it. Correct? We will have to what? Remove heat from it to convert it into what? Ice at 0 degree. So it is 336 joule per gram only. I'm just writing minus sign because we are going to remove heat. Same way, what do you mean by specific latent heat of boiling or vaporizing? I'll just write that value also. Specific latent heat of boiling or vaporization, or they also call it as a steam. So in this case we are converting water at 100 degree into what? Steam at 100 degree. So when you are converting water at 100 degree into steam at 100 degree, you are going to what? Give it heat. And how much is the heat given to it? 2268 joule per gram. But if you want to convert steam back into water, then how much heat will you remove? Minus 2268 joule per gram. So you have to be careful when it is whether you are supplying heat or you are removing heat. Okay, let's see now. So what do you mean by specific latent heat of fusion of ice is 336 joule per gram? It means for every 1 gram of ice to melt, it will need how much amount of heat? 336 joule. Now if you remember how much heat was needed to raise the temperature of water by 1 degree for 1 gram, it was 4.2 joule. So see, to raise the temperature of water by 1 degree, you need how much energy? 4.2 joule. But to melt 1 gram of ice to water, or to convert 1 gram of water to ice, you need to add or remove how much heat? 336 joule. It is 80 times more. So you can see the specific latent heat of fusion is too high. Okay, and that's the reason there are some natural consequences that you have in your portion that they have given. Okay, I'll repeat once again. Specific latent heat of fusion of ice is too high. It means it needs very large amount of heat to melt, as well as you need to remove a very large amount of heat to convert it back to ice. So now the reasons which you have out here, they are all based more or less on the same concept. So you'll be similar kind of reasoning is there in all of them. So first question, like snow on mountains does not melt all at once. So why does all the snow on the mountain doesn't melt immediately or at once? That's again, first thing is what you will blame it on what? Water, ice has got a very high specific latent heat of fusion. So for water to convert into ice to convert into water, it needs a very large amount of heat, right? But this amount of heat is not possible to be obtained in a very short time from the surrounding, and hence it will not melt immediately. And this is also the reason that that's why you get water, like the rivers are flowing around the year. And what would have happened if all the ice had melted immediately? So if all the ice would have melted immediately, then there would have been floods. Then second thing they can ask you, in cold countries, water in lakes and ponds does not freeze all at once. So this is the other way around. Why do the ponds do not freeze all at once? So the reason being what, when the water in the ponds has to freeze, meaning what, it has to give out a large amount of heat, or you need to remove a large amount of heat from that water, but you are not able to remove that such a large amount of heat of water because it has a very high specific latent heat of fusion, and that's why it is going to take longer. Same way they can ask you that when you want to cool your soft drinks, you don't add cold water to it, we add ice cubes, right? Why do we add ice cube? Because again, that ice has a very high specific latent heat of fusion. So for every 1 gram of ice to melt, it will absorb how much heat from the soft drink? 336 joule, and hence it will cool your soft drink more effectively. Got it? So we do not add up water at 0. We always prefer what? Adding up ice cube at 0 degree. Then what? When ice in a frozen lake starts melting, its surrounding becomes very cold. See, they can also ask you the same question as what, it becomes very cold after the snowfall or after the hailstorm rather than during the hailstorm. Or when the ice in a frozen lake starts melting, it becomes very, very cold. The reason being what? When the ice starts melting, due to its very high specific latent heat of fusion, it is going to absorb a large amount of heat from the surrounding. And because it absorbs a large amount of heat from the surrounding, that's why you will feel very cold or bitterly cold. Okay, so these are the applications that you have on this. Now just one more thing, we had already discussed this flow chart, right? So we are going to make use of this flow chart in all the numericals that we do. Okay, and we have to learn, there are a couple of graphs that we need to draw. I'll show you those graphs after this. So you need to understand this concept first properly. So if you remember, ice minus 10 converts to ice at 0. So to find out how much heat was given out, you can use the formula mc delta T, the same formula which you did earlier. But whenever there is a change in the state, remember we are going to use which formula? ml. L stands for what? Latent heat. We can say this is latent heat of fusion, so I'm writing small f out here. Then which formula we use here? Water 0 to water 100. So Q3 will be equal to what? Again mc delta T. But here C will be of the ice, here C will be of the water. Then water 100 to steam 100. So what would be your Q4 now? So that will also be equal to what? ml, but latent heat of vaporization. How will you find the total heat? You have to just add up all this Q1, Q2, Q3 and Q4 and you'll get the total heat. Okay, now next thing, now we have to learn about the graph, how to draw the graph. So this graph which I am drawing now out here, it's called as a heating curve. So I am drawing heating curve of ice. This is really confusing, heating curve. See, let's say this is your y-axis and then this is your x-axis. It's a rough sketch, guys. So this is the heat, sorry, this axis is the temperature. We'll write it in degree centigrade, and here the heat that we have supplied in joule, or we can say time in second. It could be temperature versus heat or temperature versus time, doesn't matter. Let's say this is minus 10 degree centigrade, then this point is 0 degree centigrade, this point is 100 degree centigrade. So in the beginning, when you start heating up your ice, look, basically I am representing this same information in the graphical form. So when I am heating up ice at minus 10, what will you find? There is going to be a rise in the temperature. When you continue to heat up further, you will find that there is no change in the temperature, but it must have melted, right? So there is no change in the temperature, but we have supplied the heat further. Then what will happen? Again there will be a rise in the temperature, and then again there will be no rise in the temperature for some time, and then again there will be a rise in the temperature. Okay, I don't know further, so I've just drawn the dotted lines. So say this is your process AB, that's your BC, CD, E and then point F out here. So what does BC represent? BC represents what? Melting of ice. What does DE represent? Boiling. Boiling of water. What does AB represent? So AB represents what? Rise in temperature of ice. What would DC represent? Rise in temperature of water and rise in temperature of steam. Clear? So this is called as a heating curve. Why I told you it's a very difficult part? Because see, they say heating curve, but you will not see any curve in the whole diagram. But somehow they have still named it as what? Heating curve. Now, next thing is a cooling curve. So just like heating curve, there is also a cooling curve. So what do we in a cooling curve? Cooling curve is basically a reverse process. We are going upwards now. We are removing heat. So steam 100 will become what? Ice at -10. So basically, if you just start doing the lateral inversion of this, look, your lateral inversion of this, so it will say it will start from here. It will go like this, then again down, then again horizontal, and then again legs down. So say I'll name it as P, Q, R, S, T, U. What does QR represent? So it will represent what? Condensation. ST is what? Freezing. But it is called as what? Freezing. This is a decrease or drop in the temperature of water, drop in the temperature of ice. If you notice one more thing, that your DE is greater than BC. They may ask you why. Why is this segment longer than BC? Think about it. That's because latent heat of vaporization is more as compared to the latent heat of fusion. And because latent heat of vaporization is more, that's why it's a longer line. Also, if you know that latent heat of vaporization is approximately 7 times, okay, is approximately 7 times of the latent heat of fusion. Okay, now I'm just telling you some data. If you remember, it will help you. So usually they give you an exam, but if you remember, it's better, because sometimes they may not give you, then you'll have to assume it yourself. So see, the specific heat that you are going to use in this problem, I mean for ice, is 2100 joule per kg per Kelvin. The latent heat which we use for ice is how much? 336,000 joule per kg. The specific heat we use for water is 4200 joule per kg per Kelvin, and the latent heat of vaporization is equal to 226,800. You can see how high it is for steam. Joule per kg per, sorry, it's only joule per kg. Okay, that's the latent heat of vaporization. So you can see vaporization is approximately 7 times more than that of the fusion. Okay, so that is all the theory that you have in this part. So read the theory well, and we'll discuss the doubts if you have any in the class. Okay, I'll make one more video on this to cover up the numericals of calorimetry.